Well, thank you for having me here. I'm really honored to be speaking to all of you about a career in accounting because it's a career that I am very proud of, and it's one that allows me to do what I love every day. So hopefully I can give you some information about a career in accounting and tell you all of the different things and opportunities that have been opened up to me because of my chartered accountant designation. So in thinking of what I was going to talk to you about today, I was reminded of a letter that I read online that went viral across all the social media sites about a month ago. The letter was written by a gentleman named Mike Rowe. He was the host of a reality show called Dirty Jobs. Has anyone heard of that show? I think they still play reruns on the Discovery Channel. Anyways, the show followed Mike Rowe. He would shadow kind of hardworking Americans on their unusual jobs. And Mike is a kind of somewhat humorous fellow. He's a bit outspoken, and he occasionally provides kind of unorthodox job or career advice. And so the letter he wrote was in response to some criticism from a fan based on one of his jokes and advice that he'd given. And the reason I mention all of this is because I read the letter, it really struck a chord with me. The letter really aligned with some of the decisions I made when I was in high school and trying to decide what I wanted to do for a career. So in the letter, Mike gives an alternative to kind of that age-old career advice: follow your dreams, don't give up. And I'll just read you a quick quote from it so you know what I mean. Mike says, "Staying the course on not giving up on your passion only makes sense if you're headed in a sensible direction. Because passion and persistence, while most often associated with success, are also the essential ingredients of futility." So a bit of an unusual quote. My talk's going to follow that theme today, and I'm going to tell you how I made a decision to go into a career not based on something I was really passionate about, but instead something that I thought was practical, had job security, and how I ended up being a chartered accountant, and how I ended up finding my passion and really loving what I do. And I guess to start, I've always been a kind of practical person. I'm the youngest in my family. I have 2 older sisters. So I was always a bit mature for my age. And I saw my sisters follow their passions when they went to university. My oldest sister loved the ocean. Very young age, she said she wanted to be a marine biologist. So she went and took a Bachelor of Science at university and followed that up with a PhD in marine biology. After she graduated, she was working in a lab. And my other sister was always fascinated with genetics and DNA. And she did a Bachelor of Science at university as well, and after that did a master's degree in genetics. When she graduated, she worked in a lab. So I saw how both my sisters kind of followed their passion and their dreams and ended up in initial careers that were very tedious and left them feeling quite unfulfilled. So I decided I would make a practical choice. I would choose a career in a field that had job security and lots of income earning potential. And so I chose to become an accountant. But accounting wasn't exactly a passion of mine. It's not like I was a little girl who said, I want to be an accountant when I grow up. I don't think very many people can say that accounting is a passion or a dream of theirs. By its very nature, accounting is kind of dry. It's definitely not a dynamic topic. I mean, the basic concepts of accounting have pretty much stayed the same since medieval times. So I decided, though, to go with accounting, and I had good instructors in university, and I found out that I was quite good at it. Not to say that accounting courses in university are easy, but due to the nature of accounting, with lots of hard work and practice, you can master pretty much any concept given to you in class, because accounting is very linear. Every concept builds on the next in a very systematic, organized fashion. And none of the concepts are so convoluted that you can't understand them without practice and repeating problems and practicing problems. Also, accounting is tangible to a certain extent. The numbers are real. If you're confused by a concept, you just watch the numbers flow through the calculation, and everything balances out at the end, and you can see how the numbers and figures flow through the financial statements. So I always liked that about accounting, and that allowed me to do very well in the courses. When I graduated university, I started a career as an auditor, and I articled at a large public practice accounting firm in the city here called Deloitte. And the traditional path for a chartered accountant student articling and working towards their designation is to work in the audit group. So I worked in the audit group, And a misnomer for a lot of people, they think auditors, sit in a tiny room in silence, working away by themselves. It's actually not like that at all. You're working in groups on teams. You're working in, usually you're sitting in the audit client's boardroom. As a team, you're chatting with each other while you're working. It's a very social environment. And then you're going to the client and asking them questions and talking to the client. So communication is actually a huge component of accounting. A lot of people don't necessarily know that right away. And sometimes auditing, you can do some fun things. I had one particular client that was, they made those scratch lotto tickets, the ones with the crosswords on them, and you scratch off the letters and try to get a word to win money. And one of the tests we ran at this particular audit client is we had to scratch so many of their scratch cards to make sure that the letters underneath the scratch material were what they said they would be based on their computer printout. So as a new articling student, I got to spend 4 hours one day scratching hundreds of crossword puzzle cards. So I mean, sometimes you're not necessarily always crunching numbers. You're doing interesting things. You're doing inventory counts. You're out talking with the client. And during this time, while you're articling, you're working pretty hard. You tend to work fairly long hours, but the public practice accounting firms have a very work hard, play hard atmosphere. And that corporate culture, coupled with the fact that you really get to bond with your fellow articling students over your long and sometimes stressful days, really makes the whole articling process bearable and sometimes even enjoyable. So you're working hard and you're learning a lot. There's quite an exponential learning curve when you're articling. And you're really motivated to learn during this time, to apply the concepts that you've learned in school into practical, real-life client situations. And you're motivated to learn because at the end of your articling period, you have to write a 3-day case-based exam, and you have to pass the exam in order to get your professional designation. This was the process when I got my chartered accountant designation, and it's still relatively the same with the new designation called CPA, Chartered Professional Accountant. And like any process in life, the more challenging the process, the more rewarding it is to complete that process and obtain success. And without a doubt, the day I passed the UFI and obtained my chartered accountant designation is one of the proudest moments of my life. And getting my chartered accountant designation was and is so gratifying only because it's a somewhat difficult process and it takes a lot of time and work. So here I was in 2007. I just obtained this really meaningful, sought-after title of chartered accountant that I was quite proud of. But I wasn't really happy with what I was doing. I was an articling student at Deloitte, and I was auditing. And some people like auditing, and that's great because it's an excellent career if you enjoy it. But it wasn't for me. There can be a feeling of animosity as an auditor sometimes. You're at the client's workplace, and you're trying to obtain audit evidence. So you're walking into their office, you're interrupting them during their busy workday, you're asking them questions, asking for working papers, trying to get documentation. And even though the client's hired you as the auditor to be here and do this job, it can sometimes feel like you're working in opposition. You're trying to obtain your audit evidence, they're just trying to do the job, and you're kind of interrupting and pestering them. So I didn't really enjoy that auditor-client relationship as much. Fortunately, while I was articling at Deloitte, I had the opportunity to work in the tax pool, preparing personal tax returns for clients of the firm. And tax is very different than audit. First of all, the clients really value the service you're providing in tax. Even though you might call them and pester them and ask them for more information in order to complete their tax return, they value the service because, first of all, you're filing a tax return that they're legally bound to file. They have to get it done. And secondly, with your advanced knowledge of the income tax legislation, you're saving them money. You're helping reduce their tax liability by applying all of their credits and deductions to the full extent. And who doesn't like saving money? So clients really value the service you provide in tax, more so than maybe your audit clients do. So I really liked this accountant-client relationship in tax, so I immediately transferred into the tax group at Deloitte. And after working there for a couple of years, I decided to switch firms, and I moved to Myers Norris Penny. Myers Norris Penny is a mid-sized firm in the city here. And the difference between working for a large internationally based firm like Deloitte versus a mid-sized Canadian-based firm like Myers & Penny is you have a different client mix. And a different mix of clients means you do different mix of work. And at Myers & Penny, I got to do a larger proportion of tax planning and corporate reorganization work. And tax planning and corporate reorganizations is really developing and enacting large-scale plans to help your clients save significant amounts in tax over the long term. And I found that I loved it. I love tax planning. I had found something that I was really passionate about. And I'll tell you why I love tax so much. There's a couple reasons. First of all is the auditor-client relationship that I talked about, or the, tax and client relationship I talked about, which is that you're helping them. They really value the work you do. And with tax planning, you're allowing individuals and businesses to save a significant amount in their tax dollars and the tax owing to the government. And with that money, the businesses can use it to expand and grow. Individuals use it to save for retirement or save for their children's education. So my tax planning was really allowing businesses and individuals to do great things. And so it's something you can really be proud of. So I enjoy that. You also get to meet some really interesting businesses and individuals doing things that are incredible, and you help them achieve success in these really interesting fields. One particular client I had was a couple of physicians who had a long career in the Canadian military. And they decided to start a business where they would develop the supplies required to treat trauma mid-operation in the field. So they had developed all these really interesting medical devices and supplies, special types of glue to glue wounds shut quickly in the field so that then the patient could be transported to a field hospital. Or medicine that could be injected quickly through the skin using spring-loaded needles and things like that. It was incredible, and these two individuals were so passionate about what they did, and it was really rewarding being able to help them get their business, or save their business money and allow them to expand. So I love that part about tax. Secondly, when I was at Myers & Penny, I did the in-depth taxation program, which is a program where you take courses while you're working, and it essentially makes you a tax specialist. And I found the more I learned about tax, the more I loved it. It's such an interesting topic. Tax is one part social policy. The Minister of Finance and the government implements tax legislation to create certain behaviors in taxpayers. For instance, in Canada, if you contribute to your RSP, Registered Retirement Savings Plan, you get a deduction on your tax return. The whole purpose of that deduction on your tax return is to encourage Canadians to save for their retirement. And there's numerous examples of this in tax legislation. Provisions put in place to encourage certain behavior in taxpayers. So there's a real political side to tax, which I love. It changes as the economy changes and encourages different behaviors in taxpayers as we need different stimulus in the economy. Also, tax is legislation. Tax is law. So being a tax accountant is kind of like being a mix of an accountant and a lawyer. You spend a lot of your time doing tax research, reading the legislation, interpreting the legislation, reading court cases, reading the judgments. And then there's a problem-solving element because you have to take what you've learned from these reading legislation and the court cases and apply it to your specific client situation. And I always love problem-solving, so I enjoy tax for that as well. And the third reason I love tax is the job security. Tax is a necessary consideration in almost every business transaction because a responsible individual and business owner needs cash flow to operate a sustainable business. Cash flow is impacted by tax. Tax paid reduces cash flow, and a tax refund increases cash flow. Likewise, any business or investment decision that creates either income or a loss, which really is every investment, also impacts tax. Increased income means you might have to pay more tax the following year, and a tax loss, or a loss of income means you would have a potentially tax refund. So for how vital and pervasive tax is, very few people understand it, nor do they want to. They're quite happy to pay someone to interpret the legislation for them. And that's where the real pleasure of understanding tax comes from. Because you could compare it to being fluent in a language that's the basis for most business transactions, yet very few people know how to speak it. So if you know how to speak that language, your services will always be of value, and you'll always be in demand. And having skills that many other people do not have has opened up a lot of opportunities for me. First of all, when I was at Myers Norris Penny, a colleague approached me and asked me if I was interested in serving on a non-for-profit board. And I'd never thought of doing that before. But most non-for-profit organizations that have volunteer boards struggle to find accountants and lawyers to sit on those boards. They need lawyers to provide legal advice for the governance of the organization. And they want accountants to provide financial advice to ensure the organization is meeting its fiduciary duties. So I decided to volunteer for the board of an organization in Edmonton here called Edmonton Women's Shelter. It's a non-for-profit organization that runs the largest and oldest sheltering organization in Canada. And it's an incredibly fulfilling position because I get to use the skills and knowledge I've acquired in my accounting career to help my community, improve my community, and help this organization do its very, very noble job, which is providing shelter to women and children fleeing domestic violence. And there's a lot of, sad stories you hear sitting on the board of an organization like that, but there's also a lot of rewarding stories and success stories. One I'd like to share that I like to tell people, one success story about a child who had spent time in our shelters. And to understand the story, you have to know, when people come to our shelters, they're often fleeing in the middle of the night. It's not a planned escape. They didn't pack for the event. So they come to our shelters with nothing. So we always have a care package waiting in the room when they arrive at shelter. Clothing, toiletries, and we usually have things for the children as well, because most women fleeing domestic violence often have at least one child with them. And one thing that Wynn House, or Edmonton Women's Shelter, has always done is they've always had a teddy bear or stuffed animal sitting on the bed for the children when they come. And this really left an impact with this one little boy who stayed at our shelter 15 years ago now. He loved that this teddy bear was waiting for him. It made him feel safe and at home. And now he's grown up. He's a successful business person here in Edmonton. And he's made it his duty to always supply Wynn House with teddy bears. Every year, several times a year, he will deliver truckloads of teddy bears to all of our shelters to make sure that there's enough for all of the 300 and some children that stay there each year. So it's kind of a nice success story. He felt impacted by the work that Wynn House did, and he's returning the favor now. The other opportunity, of course, that I had available to me as a tax specialist, because I had skills that very few people have, is teaching. It's very difficult to find someone to teach tax because even within the field of accounting, not a lot of accountants are knowledgeable in tax because they could be auditors, they could be consultants, they could be in financial reporting or in budgeting. And because there's so many opportunities for tax specialists out there, it's very difficult to get some of those accountants to come and teach at a post-secondary institution. So that's how I ended up working at MacEwan. I had an opportunity to teach a night course at NAIT, an intro tax course, and I found out that I loved it. And MacEwan was hiring a full-time accountant instructor around that same time, which was 2011. And I applied for the position, and the rest is history. And I really love teaching. It's something I never thought I would do when I was in university. I was planning to be an accountant. This wasn't part of my career path. But I love the challenge, breaking down really complex accounting and tax topics into bite-sized pieces that students can understand. I love it when students master a concept and they have that aha moment. And I love the enthusiasm for the topic and the thirst for knowledge that students have. So I found something that I loved even more than tax planning. And the opportunities were available because of the skills and knowledge I acquired in obtaining my chartered accountant designation. So I started out my career not necessarily following a dream or a passion of mine. I made a practical choice to become an accountant. And once I obtained my chartered accountant designation and I had those valuable skills, then I applied those skills to my passion and discovered what I love to do, which is tax. So really, in closing, I don't want anyone to walk away from here today thinking that I've told you not to follow your dream or don't be passionate about what you do. But instead I'm saying is, be practical. Pick a career that's in demand, something that you're good at, you have skills in, and then challenge yourself. Learn as much as you can along the way. And when you achieve that initial level of success, and in my case, chartered accountant designation, then use all of the skills and knowledge you've acquired and apply it to your passion. And follow your dreams with the expertise to be successful at them. Because in obtaining an accounting designation, you acquire not only technical skills that are very valuable, such as understanding cash flow, being able to interpret financial statements, understanding the value of assets, the importance of leverage, debt management, but you also acquire a lot of soft skills. And that's the thing that people don't necessarily know about accounting. You develop really great communication skills, written, verbal. You develop team skills, leadership skills, time management skills. You know how to handle competing deadlines, and you have stress management skills. And all of those technical and soft skills will allow you to be successful in whatever you decide to do, whether you stay in public practice as an auditor or in tax, whether you decide to start your own business, or whether you decide to be in management in almost any field or industry, or, like me, if you decide to teach. So that was my message for you today. So think practical. Don't necessarily follow your dreams. Acquire the skills required to be successful and apply those to your passion.